Bitcoin conference, and here I'm Anna Tutova, co-founder of Coins Telegram Media Group, and here our guest, Chris McCann, who is co-founder of Race Capital and as well one of the early investors into Solana. Great to have you here, Chris.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
So can you tell us about your background? How did you get into venture capital and how did you get into crypto?
Sure. As you mentioned, my name is Chris McCann. I'm one of the general partners of Race Capital. We're a venture fund based in Silicon Valley, San Francisco, and we invest in all things pre-seed, seed, infrastructure-centric. We typically lead most of our investments, and as you mentioned, we're probably most well known for being the early lead seed investors for Solana, FTX, Lightning Labs, Databricks, and a bunch of other companies across Web 2 and Web 3. I guess how I got started was before this, I used to work at a more traditional venture fund called Greylock Partners. I used to work with two guys there, Reid Hoffman and John Lilly. Reid was the founder of LinkedIn, John Lilly was the former CEO of Mozilla. And Greylock actually made a lot of early investments in the Bitcoin space in the 2013-14 timeframe. So they invested in Blockstream, Zappo, and Coinbase back during that timeframe. So back then was when I also bought my first Bitcoin. I was mostly just kind of curious about the technology and a lot of the core developers. Long story short, in 2015, one of my roommates at the time ended up being one of the early Ethereum core developers. So I also participated in the Ethereum sort of pre-sale as well because of that.
Was it in California?
Yeah, in California, yeah. And so that's what kind of took me down this whole Web3 crypto rabbit hole and kind of here where I am today. That was really the start of it.
Yes, it's interesting. And did you participate anywhere on the project side, or have you been always in venture capital?
Oh, have I done any of the projects myself?
Yeah.
No, I guess always mostly on the, investing side. I've done some things for fun, more on the artistic NFT stuff. So I started one of the NFT projects in the Solana ecosystem called Playground, which did two collections, one called The Waves, the other one called Epochs. It's purely just an art collection. It's all generative art stuff. It's just for fun. I like collecting art. I like looking at art. Outside of that, it's been everything kind of just on the investment side.
And we are now obviously in the bear market, so how do you see it? Do you still actively invest into projects?
Yeah, of course, yeah. For, I guess maybe let me answer your question in two ways. One from a venture standpoint, for Race Capital, we invest typically in about 1.5-ish companies per month. We've done it very consistently, month over month. So our pacing actually really hasn't changed all that much. We're very early stage investors, so we don't have a liquid portfolio, we don't do trading, we don't do market making. It's all just venture style investments. So for us, it pretty much stays the same, and we invest particularly through both bull market and bear market cycles, because now if you really believe in the space, a lot of the companies being started today, these are going to be the most attractive in the future going forward. For example, when we invested in Solana in the seed round, this was in 2018 when the market was down about 65%. Most people were pulling away from the space, but that was really the time you should have been leaning in. Same thing for FTX in 2019. When we invested, I think the market was down 80-90% back then. But this is the time when a lot of the best founders kind of rise up to the top. So for us, yeah, our pacing hasn't changed, and we do the same thing month over month.
So it's quite difficult to predict the trends. So how do you define whether it's worth to invest in this or that company or no?
I guess, are you asking more in terms of the, category or timing?
Both category, timing, as well your investment criteria when you decide whether to invest or not.
Yeah, I guess maybe the timing one I just covered, we're sort of very consistent venture style. So maybe I'll do more of the category stuff. So for Race, we tend to bias towards things more on the infrastructure layer. So things like data infrastructure, transaction systems, developer tools, payment infrastructure, financial infrastructure, low-level systems type stuff. This tends to be our sweet spot. One, because this stuff is very sort of evergreen by nature. And then two is we don't really need to predict the consumer applications on top. So whether it's gaming or NFT or DeFi, whatever, they're all going to need a lot of these core services. They all need notifications from Notify, or bridging from Allbridge, or wallet services, or RPC nodes. A lot of all these core pillars are the same no matter what it is on top. So we tend to be kind of more geeky technical infrastructure people by nature, and so this is more of our sweet spot. But that being said, I guess when you look at the applications today, I think if you look at all of the actual daily active users and all of the transactions you see on a month-on-month basis, I think it's about it's like, I think 40% or so is on the gaming side, 35% or so is on the NFT side, a smaller remaining is on the DeFi side, and a smaller portion is kind of on other related things, kind of sort of work platform, sort of other stuff. So this is kind of like where we see usage today. This does not necessarily translate towards where it will be in the next 5 years, but I think it's important to understand what the stuff is being used for, particularly in times like now when the usage has fallen, all of these core fundamental things that are still being used, these are the important things to kind of pay attention to.
And you are quite active in Solana ecosystem. Like, why do you think that Solana is the future and Solana is the right chain?
Yeah.
Are you a multi-chain and chain agnostic? Do you invest into other ecosystems?
Yeah. I guess let me answer that in kind of two ways. I guess like one, from Race Capital perspective, like we're very non-religious people by nature. And so I think everybody probably knows us for the early seed stage investment in Solana, but at the same time, we also invested in Lightning Network, which is Bitcoin only, hardcore Bitcoin people, like they hate all this other stuff. So like we actually have both of these in the same fund, and other things. Like in Fund 2, we've invested in things across the Arweave ecosystem, the Near one. We invested in Martian, which is public within the Aptos ecosystem. We invested in one on the Sway side. So like we think there's similar to like I guess the cloud platforms of today, AWS, GCP, Azure, and others, there's going to be multiple winners from the layer 1 ecosystem, and we're going to have to figure out how to interoperate between them. That's probably just going to how the market structure works. It's probably not going to be one of these taking 99.99% of the market. That's probably just not how it's going to develop. So we're very non-religious. We're happy to look at anything. We don't really care where you come from. And again, we like these core services that kind of bridge across all layer 1 ecosystems. For example, one of our portfolio companies, Notify, which does notification and communication services for Web3, they work across all L1 ecosystems. So we like also these developer tool sets kind of in the middle that sit between them. I guess to your other question of like, I guess why Solana? To me, like, I've always felt that transaction throughput, speed, and the cost of transactions matter a lot at scale, and enabling this to be more efficient will allow more different types of applications being built. For example, in DeFi, you might need the utmost security and utmost sort of guarantees, but in a gaming context, like this might not be as important. And so you need the throughput to enable new applications to be able to be used by consumers at scale. And this is actually sort of what you see. So if you look at, not by TVL, but if you actually look at daily active users or monthly active addresses on any of these L1 ecosystems, Solana is actually the biggest by far. I think Solana has about 44% of the active usage transactions that pass through it. And this is bigger than most of the other L1s that exist out there. And so again, for us, like I think we're trying to optimize for usage, not just pure dollar amounts or TVL stuff. I think that's important, but I think a lot of these things can be more sort of gamed out or more skewed or whatever, versus like we want this stuff to be used by consumers at large, and the only way you're going to get there is through throughput. But again, we're very non-religious, so we're happy to look at anything, but I do think Solana has a lot of interesting kind of characteristics to it.
And you mentioned some investments into Aptos and Sui ecosystems, so can you tell more about yourselves on all these two layers?
Yeah, we invested on one on each, so I guess we don't have a lot to talk about, but on the Aptos ecosystem, we invested in a wallet called Martian. Martian is now the biggest kind of wallet by nature within the Aptos ecosystem as a whole. You can kind of think about it like MetaMask on Ethereum or Phantom on Solana. They're effectively the main one for the Aptos ecosystem. I think their last count, 62% of all of the transactions that passed through Aptos went through Martian. So they've actually done a fantastically good job of sort of capturing the market share from that perspective. And they launched testnet and kind of mainnet when Aptos went live. So that's on the Aptos side. On the Sway side, we invested in one company also within the infrastructure layer. This one hasn't been announced, so I probably can't talk about the name of the company, but it's also very similar thesis. So we're trying to find the underpinning layer that everything is going to need on top of it, and we really fell in love with the team that was building something very fundamental on it.
And in the startup ecosystem, most of the startups anyway fail. It doesn't matter whether they're in crypto or in traditional industries. So what are the decisive factors, in your opinion, for the success of the company?
Yeah, there's some, we tend to bias or prefer, it tends to fall into, I guess, some combination of three buckets, if you will. One, you have the, and again, this also really depends on the stage of company. So for example, we're looking at primarily pre-seed and seed type stuff. For most of the founders that we back, they either maybe have an MVP product or maybe have a few customers, but by and large, these things are pretty early. So there's really not a lot of proof points or data to look upon. And so a lot of it is fundamental conviction you have to believe. Versus if you're doing Series A, B, or liquid token type stuff, you're actually looking at more usage and data and proof points and traction or whatever. So the first bucket is really looking at usage stuff. Although again, in pre-seed seed context, you typically don't have a lot of hard data to look upon. The second one is fundamentally the market that these companies are going after. So in my opinion, if you're going after sort of communication or bridging or financial services or payments or gaming, again, these things are multi-billion, if not multi-trillion-dollar markets. And so you have a lot of maneuverability to maneuver in this, versus if you're picking something really specific like DAO tooling for real estate projects that are crowd-funded, regulated in the US, that might be a more narrow and niche market. And so you have less kind of wiggle room to sort of maneuver upon. So you want to look at the whole kind of total market size. And then three, the most important one, really just goes upon the team. And the team, it's not just the pedigree, it's not just who they are, their LinkedIn profile, but it's also what they've done before. Why do they believe in what they believe in? What is fundamentally driving them? Why do they believe in what they're doing in so much? Because a lot of our most successful founders, if you will, like the Anatolis and Sam Bankman-Frieds of the world, a lot of them, they have this very, almost sometimes irrational belief in the beginning that drives them to such an extreme degree versus other people. And our job, at least as venture investors, is to try to find this very special type of people as early as possible and try to help and support them as much as we humanly can. And by the way, even with all the rigorous and diligence and whatever and all the stuff that we do, we don't always get it right either. The sort of natural place that most companies fall into is your odds mathematically are stacked against you, so most likely you will fail. It's only the outliers that become successful in this. But again, we're venture investors, so we understand this, and this is part of how things work, and so this is also kind of why we do what we do too.
And do you have any advices for the startups, how to grow their community and how to get the first customers?
Yeah, I guess in the community side, I guess a few thoughts, I guess. One thing is you should try to develop as much as you can things organically around your ecosystem, what you're doing, what you believe in, your product, early users. You should not try to do a lot of unnatural things in the beginning to make the numbers look better. So for example, airdrop campaigns or giveaways or an NFT drop or whatever. Again, that might make your Telegram numbers look bigger, might make your social media presence grow, and that might make you feel good, but that doesn't really help you grow the business at all or get customers. You actually need people who either fundamentally need what you're building or have tried other things and those things don't work for them, or people who resonate with you. It has to be people who really fundamentally believe it. And then once you've built something enough where you get product market fit, that you feel this product really works with a subset of customers, then you could start to think about growing it. But I wouldn't spend too much time trying to grow it inorganically in the beginning, this really has to come from people who really fundamentally need what you're building.
And as well, how do you see the state of the current market, and what may be the catalyst for the next bull market?
Yeah, current market is not so good, although crypto goes in cycles. Again, back when we invested in Solana and FTX, the market was pretty bad, and then the market went pretty crazy, and then now it's pretty bad again. So this stuff happens. It's pretty natural. This is outside of the control of most companies, and so any one company can't fight against this or can't do anything. This is what it is. But the good thing now, like for example, even at Breakpoint, maybe there's slightly less people, or maybe the people who came are less crazy or less exuberant about everything, but the people sticking around now, again, are your true fundamental believers. These are people really building products and services and who care about this stuff. And so now is the time to, I guess the short version would be now is the time to build, or now is the time to go out and try to do a lot of stuff, because this will be the foundation that the next bull run, if you will be built upon. Do I exactly know what that catalyst will be? No, I'm not sure. It's usually not necessarily clear beforehand, but now is when all that foundation is set. So now, and again, this is I guess why I go back to now is actually a really good time to be investing, at least from a venture perspective, because the people now doing it are doing it not for the hype, not because they think this market is crazy, not because they're trying to make a lot of money now. It's because the people building now are the people who really fundamentally believe in this stuff. And just like the community, you shouldn't try to grow it inorganically. Same thing on the entrepreneur side. This is the time where the people who are doing it for very fundamental reasons, and these are the people who we really like to meet.
Yeah, that's true. And can you tell something about your NFT collections? You showed you got a customized T-shirt of MonkeDAO.
Yeah, I don't know if you could show it in camera, I guess, but I was really the MonkeDAO people actually made a one-on-one sweatshirt shirt for me with one of my monkeys, so it's really cool. Thank you, MonkeDAO people, for doing that. I guess I was mentioning I love collecting a lot of the NFT art myself. I'm not really a trader. I don't buy these things to sell them. I mostly buy things either for the community, or it's artworks and artists I just personally fall in love with, or I really aesthetically like. And so for the monkeys, I own 34 monkeys, I think. I think in total. I bought them all on mint date. I've never sold them afterwards. Same thing for a lot of the other kind of bigger NFT projects within the Solana ecosystem. And then I also collect a lot more things, mostly within the generative art ecosystem. So I have a lot of things that came out of art blocks on the ETH side, or also within the Solana ecosystem, like I was mentioning, the Playground Waves and Playground Epochs, which was created by this artist named Echo33, who's a really well-known kind of generative artist that came from the Tezos ecosystem. I also collect a lot of the one-on-one artwork that has come out of exchange art, and a lot of the artists that they work with more on the abstract side. And again, my plan is not to really sell these things. In my office, I have a big TV, a Samsung frame that I actually display a lot of the stuff in. So I view it and I treat it more like works of art. And I like to look at these things and change things around and have my own little mini gallery at home, because I don't know, it makes me happy, I guess, and I like these things. So and I don't know, I just try to be supportive, especially for a lot of the early Solana NFT projects, because again, I just like this stuff.
And do you still invest into NFT projects? From venture side?
Yeah, from the venture side, we've done, I guess, some more on the infrastructure layer. But we haven't done any of the, I guess, projects specifically, because again, for a lot of the NFT projects themselves, it's much more consumery. They're trying to build brands or characters or games or whatever, which I think is really cool. But again, I view it more as artwork. It's more of my own personal hobby. We don't tend to invest in this stuff as much directly. I just kind of personally like it.
Okay, thank you for sharing your expertise and your NFT collection with us.
Yeah,
chatting with you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, bye everybody.